calling in from D.C. Did you breakfast yet, Harriet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Do this.
There you go. Maybe I go, right? Okay, you can have your all right. Well, as in the interest of time, it is 3 minutes after the hour, and we only have 2 minutes a day together. So I will kickstart the webinar, and whoever is coming in, from Calgary, yeah, Val, awesome, will join us when they get here. So welcome to our webinar today. My name is Framand. I'm a senior consultant here at DDI, as well as the practice lead for coaching at DDI Canada. So as you can imagine, I'm absolutely passionate about our topic today, and we've got quite a few people joining us, so I can tell that I'm not the only one being passionate about this topic as well. Thanks very much for taking the hour to join us today and chat about this topic. So a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Joining me today is Harriet. She's our lovely producer, so she's going to be helping you out. If you have any technical issues, you can always send her a chat or send us a chat. As you have any questions on the content as we go, you can type them in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll make sure to address them as we go, and Harriet will be monitoring that for me. We'll also have some time for a Q&A at the end. So this is our roadmap here for today. First, we'll look at why coaching is so important in today's world of work, and also why it hasn't evolved to meet the needs of the modern learner. We'll also take a look at the impact of coaching done well and also coaching done poorly. And then we're going to talk about some of the skills and tools that you can implement in your organization, as well as a few tips on how you can create a coaching culture within your organization. So first off, I'm going to talk a little bit about DDI. Some of you know us well, some of you not as well, maybe. So at DDI, you may know, if you're working with us, that we're data nerds. So today I'm going to share a lot of data with you, and some from DDI, but also some from other sources like the ICF, for example, and other publications. So for those of you who would like to dig deeper after the session today, we'll be sending you the research by email, so you can certainly do that. As well, today's webinar is being recorded, so if you want to listen to the recording, you're more than welcome to do that. So we've been working for about 45 years with leaders. We have about 1,000 in 6 countries, and we help leaders build the confidence and competence to succeed. So let me start by asking you a question. I'll turn it over to you as we start. Polling question. So how ready do you think your organization's leaders are for future challenges that your business will face? Do you feel that they're totally ready? You've got this? Do you feel that they're solid, maybe mixed, shaky, right? A lot of gaps and we're worried? Or is it E, we're huddled, weeping in a corner, and we're really not sure what to do? So thanks, Diane, for letting us know where you're at in your organization. So we're just going to do a little bit of a polling question here. Harriet, if you could get the poll started, that would be awesome. And we'll just check in with people in the room where you're at.
All right. So the polling question is going to appear on your right-hand side of your screen. And what you can do, it should pop up, and then you should select your option. I'm going to let you know if you are on a mobile device, because I believe I see a couple people on a mobile device. You might not have that same functionality. But if you chat, you can always send it in the chat if you do not see that polling question come up.
Let's just do a little bit of a pulse check and to see who we have in the room today. A few seconds here to check in. So if you haven't had the chance to submit your question, your answer, close the poll and see what we have in the room.
It just says 10 seconds to submit the responses. Participants, you got 10 more seconds just to get that last response in if you haven't.
All right. You have a few people. Okay, so already a couple of people chiming in through the chat saying that they're mixed. Our answers.
All right, them on the bottom right? No?
Nope.
So can you see any?
Nope. I just see them.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure everyone can see this, Harriet.
The individual results should be shared with everyone, so everyone should be able to see them.
Okay, great. So most of you are in the mix, all right? And so not too surprising with the couple of answers that we had already. So 21 out of 35. Okay, that's good. So some gaps, maybe not widespread, right? Okay. So let's see what the research says now. And let's see how your results compare to the research. Now, the number one challenge that was identified by executives is developing the next generation of leaders. And you can see that here at the top. Now, this data is from our global leadership forecast, which we run about every 3 years, and we've been doing that for 20 years. This edition, we partnered with Ernst & Young and the conference board, and we actually studied over 25,000 leaders and over 2,000 HR professionals around the globe, so 2,500 organizations chimed in here. This data is actually from the Canadian edition, but you can compare here the global ratings with the Canada ratings, right? So it's still a really high preoccupation around the world. And how do we develop that next generation of leaders? Well, as you know, right, there's training, there's immersion, there's job shadowing, there's cross-training, and of course, there's coaching. Right? So it's a wonderful skill when a leader learns and develops, right? So it's a wonderful situation. Now, when that skill is coaching, it quickly impacts the performance of many. As you know, it permeates every level of organization, which is why it's so important. The leaders don't become good coaches just by having the role. They become good coaches through proactive skills development. Right? And so when you think about people that are promoted to frontline leaders, often it's because they're good at what they do, right? It doesn't mean that they have necessarily, as they start the leadership job, all of the skills, right, that it takes. And as we know, as Goldsmith said so well, what got you here won't get you there. So leaders become good coaches by actually working on building their coaching skills. And that takes time and it takes practice. I was thinking as I was preparing this presentation, I actually have golf clubs. They're sitting in the storage at home, and I haven't played in 3 years, right? Usually play about twice a year. Now, is that going to make me a good golfer just by staring at the clubs? Absolutely not, right? I have to practice over and over again, right? Especially a skill like golfing, it's very precise. So it's the same thing with coaching. Coaching is one of the few skills that even long-tenured executives rarely master, right? And this is from our high-resolution leadership study. It's actually assessment data from our assessment centers, 15,000 leaders that we've assessed in the last 10 years. And we can actually see coaching and developing others being here, right? It means that experience alone won't grow your leaders, right? So if I want to become a better golfer, well, I should probably take a lesson or two, right, before I start going on the course in order to effectively develop that skill set, right? So what happens is we often throw leaders, especially, young leaders, they're newer on the job and they've grown up in the organization, they've had technical positions, and we just throw them in the job and hope that, all will go well and they'll magically develop coaching skills, right? Now that doesn't happen, right? It's kind of me staring at my golf club. Now, when coaching is done well, it can lead to better agility, it can lead to faster development, more activity, and also more synergy. And we know that in today's world of work, those skills are crucial for success, right? Now, the thing is, when coaching is done poorly, especially when we think that leaders will magically develop the skill, right, and then they don't, and then it can lead to right? So low morale, it could lead to frustration, So lost opportunities, whether that's lost opportunities in revenues or maybe efficiency, it also lead to lack of flexibility, right? So when you think back to a time when you were coached poorly, I'm sure that you can think of that for yourself. I know I can. You know, it probably looks something like this, right? Your leader was doing like a job on the fly, probably wasn't too comfortable, right? Maybe told you what to do instead of coaching you, right? And I know that in those instances, I'd become disengaged, and I'm sure you can picture that as well for yourself. Now, that's, of course, a ripple effect on employees. So you want to make sure that you're maximizing, right, the coaching within the organization, and that it's done well so that it has a positive ripple effect on employees. We know that coaching today is more challenging than ever before. Company structures are flat, right? There's a lot of change. There's a lot of layoffs in many organizations, some restructurings, right? It's complex. There's a lot of ambiguity, and many evolve in a matrix environment. So leaders now not only have to develop complex skills, complex coaching skills as well, but they also not only have to coach down, but also across. And now coaching is a key link in strategy execution, right? It's really at the center of it all. The leader, especially today, cannot do it all alone, right? So we need that support, and we need to be able to set others up for success through coaching. Maybe why coaching is one of the most talked about capabilities when it comes to leadership. And as I was preparing for this webinar, I was actually going through, recent publications, et cetera, and I could definitely see that not only is it top of mind for, all of you in the room that are here today taking an hour of your time to chat about coaching with us, but also when you look at the recent publications in Training and Development magazine, right? So the most recent one in the March edition, you've got a few articles in there on how to create a coaching culture, right? So it's definitely top of mind for many. Also, in the February 2019 edition of Training and Development magazine, actually titled The Fear of Feedback, right? When we think about coaching, a lot of it has to do with, we'll see, as you know, listening and feedback, right? So it's really an important capability. It's an important skill to set employees up for success for the future. And it's something that is crucial, right, for all of you in the room. There's currently a high focus on coaching, and it's also a skill that will be even more critical in the future. So when we look at the global leadership forecast, once again, we see that not only is it something that's important now, but it's also something that will be important in the future. Now, I want to draw your attention here to the fact that today, maybe activity and innovation may not be currently a focus. However, we know that in the future it will be one. And remember at the beginning I was saying how important good coaching is on creating, that culture of creativity and enabling employees to be creative. So they really do go hand in hand. And so leaders aren't that effective today at coaching, and we need to equip them so that they become effective even more now and even more in the future. Notice is that the approach to coaching is not evolving to meet the changing nature of how people work. And when you think about your own organizations, right, how they're changing, how people need to adapt to it, are leaders still having the same kinds of coaching conversations, right? Are they even having them, first of all? And are they still having the same kinds of coaching conversations that they used to have, right, 15 or 20 years ago? And so what's happening and why, right? So the skills are evolving to meet the changing nature of how people work, and there's two reasons for that. The first one is leaders are no longer intimate with the functional knowledge of those that they lead, right? So when you think about it, leaders are more and more removed in many organizations from the technical knowledge of their direct reports. They're usually leading larger and larger teams, and the pace is really fast. It's very complex, and it makes it difficult for leaders to keep up. I just saw a question in the chat. Yes, we can share the slides with you as well as the webinar recording if you're wondering, if you just joined us. So yeah, we'll be sharing that as well as some research data for those of you who are online today. So when I started my career 20 years ago, I was in HR, and when I think back, leadership was management, right? So it was about, we didn't even really talk about leadership, right? We talked about management, and it was about goal setting and driving results and measuring, right? And obviously that's still key in our organizations today. It's still key in profit organizations, but also even in nonprofit organizations when we think about driving efficiencies, for example. When we think about it, leaders are expected today more than ever to guide development, to seek more than they tell. And leaders' jobs have become more and more complex. They do less themselves and they lead more, right? So we need to do that. However, when we look at our assessments in the high resolution study of over 15,000 leaders, we see a gap in those more critical aspects of coaching. So we see that 63% of leaders consider themselves highly effective in coaching and developing others, right? So we asked them, right, what's your perception of yourself? And it's 15,000 leaders that went through our assessment centers over 10 years, right? So that's a good chunk of leaders, most of them being mid-level to higher executive leaders. So, 63% of them are like, yeah, I'm pretty good at this, right? But actually, right, so their perception, our assessment data actually tells a different story. When you look at their capability, you'll notice here their ability to enhance organizational talent, which really basically means accelerating the development, right, of people in their teams. Only 30% of leaders are actually effective at it, right? So 63% are like, yeah, I'm pretty good at that. But actually, when we look at that, it's half that are actually effective at it. So when you look at that, right, our self-perceptions can be skewed, right? And it's really 15,000 leaders, and this is across organizations. So it's not industry specific, et cetera, right? So this is some robust data where we're really half less effective than we think we are, right, at coaching, developing others. What I found is that leaders display proficiency, and that's what our research shows, in setting expectations, right, and conveying them, clarifying the situation, and also assessing gaps and opportunities. Next, C is that leaders struggle with providing feedback, all collaborative development, and fostering confidence. So are obviously skills that are part of coaching. I just saw chat. Yes, okay, great. Number 2, now let's look at something else that leaders struggle with. Now, the number 2 reason that approach to coaching is not evolving to meet the changing nature of how people work is that leaders are struggling to help their direct reports navigate today's business landscape, right? When you think about how the world has changed, leaders themselves are actually struggling to adapt, right? So they have to adapt themselves, and they're struggling themselves. So it's not always easy for them to help their direct reports adapt. Employees need leaders who can help them steer through that complexity. Right? It's even more difficult nowadays, as you know, and employees need that guidance. What we found is that because of the speed of business, coaching is no longer a scheduled event. And you may be finding that in your organizations as well, right? The days where you could actually sit down for half an hour and conduct, coaching discussion, pretty much done. I mean, some of us, still have time to do it, but it's really pretty rare. we deliver training on coaching skills, right? And every time I give that training, I get leaders telling me, you know what, Annie, the thing is, we don't have time to do this. So what I've found is we all know why coaching is important. We've just seen, right, the research data on how it's important and why leaders aren't that effective at it. I mean, we need to still help them to do it, right? And we also need to help them to do it in a world where, guess what, it's 24/7, it's immediate, right? We're multitasking. A lot of us work in different cities or countries from each other. We all interact with each other in short bursts, right? And that is how we work nowadays. So how can we, and this is what we're going to see in the second part of the webinar, how can we make sure that we set leaders up for success and help them develop those coaching skills in a world where they have to coach in the moment, right? Where they still have to plan their discussions in a way, but do it in a way that is more on the spot. Right? They have to learn how to coach on the fly, and they have to learn to lead these discussions effectively. Because as we've seen, right, if they don't, there are negative impacts to that. And so they're going to be having coaching conversations anyways. The thing is, how effective are they going to be at it, right? Now, we also see that there are different ways in which we can coach today, right? That can be on phone, right? It can even be by email sometimes, although, you know, I don't always recommend that, but it can work in certain contexts. And sometimes I've also seen coaching on social media, right, or coaching via Skype or that kind of thing, right? It's also in smaller bites as well. And where leaders need to guide the employee through the coaching process and through the coaching conversation in a way that's very different from the way that they used to do it, you know, maybe even 5 years ago, right, or more. It's not easy to do, and as we've seen, most leaders will not develop that skill on their own, and a lot of them don't know how to do it and will use the excuse if I don't have time. We've seen, right, they need to take the time. So we'll look at some skills on how to do that in today's world. You know, a lot of you in the room are in HR, you know, or some of you may be leaders yourselves, right? You're being asked to have more and more frequent and informal coaching discussions. Conversations are ineffective and more frequent, right? Everyone loses, as we've seen, okay? So the news is coaching skills can improve, right? And they do improve. But how do we help them improve those skills? So first of all, we know that coaching behaviors can be learned. So that's the good news. This is actually from one of our research studies, which is proof that we did in 2017, where we studied the impact of our frontline level course at CDI, and we look at behavior change, right? So 6 months later, individuals will be monitored and measured on, you know, have they shifted their behaviors? Are they now better coaches, right? Do they now delegate more and better after doing our courses, right? So you see a few of the results that are here, for example, in delegation, and you've got coaching, right? So we noticed a high percentage of improvement in the ability to coach after one of our courses, right? So when they develop the skills, when they are given the opportunity to learn how to, and then they apply it after, and there's sustainment around that, right? It's not just you know, going to the course. There's a whole measurement strategy and a whole sustainment strategy around that. Once they do that and they learn, well, their effectiveness goes up tremendously, right? So the good news is, and be learned. When we look at the percentage of effective leaders, it increases more dramatically where bigger gaps exist, right? So when we look at the research, same thing, it goes up dramatically before you do the training course, 50% to after at 85%, right? So this is research that we've done at CDI, and I'm sure, right, if you use other providers, I'm sure they have research as well that they've done. But just basically bottom line here is we do see that after skills training and skills practice, right, effectiveness does go up, and it goes up significantly. So I do have a new coaching course, and I'm really excited to talk about that. That's just one of the ways, right, that we can develop it. I'll give you a whole bunch of other ways that you can do without, people taking a course. It's something else. It could be simulations, or it could be coaching them to be better coaches, right? This is just one example. And what we found in the research is that participants actually want, shorter bursts of learning. They want more skills practice. They want more videos. They want the training to be more immersive. They want it to be more modular, right, instead of like 3.5 hours. Sometimes it could be 1 hour or 2 hours. So we did do some research, and we just came out, and it's going to be launched in a couple of weeks. I'm really excited about that. And, there's different things that we go through in that course where we do teach leaders on how to be effective coaches. So we do have a coaching model. This is one of the models. Some of you may be using the GROW model, right? And so there's different coaching models out there. In the course, we teach them on how to be a good coach, the importance of the coaching relationship, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, coaching principles, and as well as communication skills. So in this model, and you can actually, right, I'm presenting it to you because honestly, you can actually use this model as is, right? And you can take this back to your organization. You're going to have it. And you can definitely even yourselves, right, teach it back or use it and apply it, right? And so we're going to go through this model really quickly, and you'll see it makes a lot of sense. So the first step, and we know that a lot of leaders aren't great at this, especially if they were promoted, right, from being technical individuals and promoted to frontline leaders, or even I've found in many organizations, the mid-level leaders, so depends how they're called. It could be managers, senior managers, or even directors, or up. If you're within a more technical type of organization, often, and you weren't taught these behaviors, you're still in more of a tell versus seek mode, right? And we all know that telling is not coaching. So the first thing to do is being more comfortable and learning how to ask questions and having provocative questions, right? And what you do with that is you want to draw out ideas, and you want to challenge thinking, and you also want to bring out creativity. And we remember, right, how that's important. So the thing that often leaders do is they'll offer, right, they're asked a question, and then they're going to offer up their own ideas and share their expertise and their knowledge. And we know that one of the best practices is before offering their own ideas, ask questions to draw out ideas from the other person, right? So that number one skill is usually not easy for leaders, especially if they grew up technically in the organization, not easy to master, is ask. So that's the first letter here of our model, and we spend a lot of time there. So your organization, if in whichever way, right, you choose to do that, making sure that you develop the skills for leaders to learn to ask good questions and to learn to ask provocative questions to get people thinking, right? So that's the first thing and the most important thing that we've found in coaching. You have to be good at asking questions. Usually counterintuitive for experts that are used to giving their opinion. Now, the second thing that we have found in the research is asking, right? So that's our second goal here for effective coaching. And, once again, some leaders are not comfortable with that aspect of it, with the human side, right? And it's using conversation to build and sustain a comfortable and trusting relationship. It's about being present, and that is a key skill that a lot of leaders struggle with today. How can I be mindfully present? And it's very difficult for me, even if I'm coaching you for 5 minutes, to be an active coach if I'm multitasking at the same time and I'm actually not really listening to you. I'm asking you a question, but I'm actually not engaged, right? So how can I make sure that I am effective in my connection with you, right? So it's about being open. It's also about being vulnerable and creating that bond. So there's definitely, as we see the key skills that are linked here, right? How to be empathetic, how to listen effectively, and how to share. If I'm asking you a question but I'm not listening, I'm not going to be a very effective coach. So again, it's about setting up the leaders for success in your organizations, helping them connect. Right? So those are really the foundations of how to be a good coach. It's also the foundations of how to be a good leader. And the third thing is that good is aimed for is to energize the person to be committed to action and take ownership. And I would say to be excited and confident about the way forward. So it's one thing to ask you questions around, well, how would you do that, right, if you're struggling with something, and then connecting that safe space for you to tell me, hey, you know what, I don't know, like, let's brainstorm that together. But I want you to then go out and do it and apply it and learn, right? And in order for you to do that, I need to create that or paint a picture for you that you can do it. And so, again, this conversation, this model can be used in a 2-minute, 5-minute conversation, right? It could be done over the phone. It could be done on the fly. But, you know, first ask good questions. Second, make sure you're creating that safe space where that person feels safe sharing, and also that you're listening to their answers, and then make sure that they want to actually, right, go and apply the solution, and creating that energy and that tension for them to do that. It's also expressing confidence in the fact that they can do it. And again, you know, some leaders struggle with that aspect of it, right? They'll just kind of, you know, their employee comes over to them and they'll just tell them what to do, and then they'll leave, right? So it's creating that foundation and giving them the tools, however you do that in their organization, on how to ask effective questions, how to connect effectively, how to energize and create that tension where they feel that you're setting them up for success. So it's our coaching model that you can easily apply within your own organization, right, if that is a model that speaks to you. Something else that you can do. So the first part is to help leaders build the skills that they need to be effective coaches, and we've seen that through the ACE model. Now, the second thing that is, I would say, the buzzword or word these days is creating a coaching culture. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that up front. And so when we think about the coaching culture, there's a few things that we need to keep in mind. First of all, there is, of course, the individual or the leader that can be coached from an external coach, right? But we also see a lot of peer coaching now more and more, and a lot of employee coaching, interestingly, right? So what we've seen in organizations that thrive in having a strong coaching culture is that they've expanded their focus to developing leaders at all levels, right? So not a senior, executive, not just frontline, but really at all levels, and integrating coaching behaviors and expectations into everyday conversations. And that's what we found that's made the difference, is really being skilled at, and the coaching model that I've just presented is just one way of doing that, is being skilled at having those everyday coaching conversations, right? And in a coaching culture, learning can actually come from a variety of sources. So it could be from peers, it could be from managers, employees, or also external coaches. And this is what's interesting, is that leaders often underestimate what they can learn from their peers, and especially from their employees, right? We're more and more evolving in organizations towards a culture of vulnerability and modesty and admitting that you don't know everything, but that wasn't the case, right, 15, 20 years ago. And it's still not the case in certain organizational cultures, where, the leader is perceived as having to be the hero and save the day and needing to know everything, right? But more and more, that's not the case, and that's kind of the foundation of the coaching culture. And so organizations, and we'll see a few tips on how to create that coaching culture as well, so we'll go through that together. And we found is that when organizations use peer and employee coaching, leaders actually are more likely to feel strongly engaged and accountable to the company and their team. So it's interesting, right? Because everyone's kind of pitching in and helping each other out, really. So that coaching culture emphasizes the skills of seeing and listening versus telling, right, that we've just seen. So it's how can we create that culture where everyone's input in coaching is valued, where employees feel free to challenge, right? So it's to challenge their leader, to challenge each other, to give ongoing feedback, to offer solutions, and also provoke thinking that maybe wouldn't have been otherwise considered. So now that we've talked a little bit about what a coaching culture is, we're going to go to another polling question now, where I'm going to ask you, in your organization today, how would you describe your current coaching culture? Is it exceptional, right? You think that maybe your leader is among the competition in this. You think it's strong. You're like, it's tenuous at best. And you had maybe never heard about a coaching culture before this call, or you had heard it, but you didn't really know what it was. So we'll go to a poll, and you'll see the polling questions appear in the chat here. There you go. I can see them now. So we're going to ask you to check which box you feel applies the most to you. Give you a few seconds to do that, about 30 seconds. All right, so we're going to close the poll now. And here are the answers. Yeah, tenuous at best. Okay, yeah, so thanks for your honesty. And yeah, what's a coaching culture? Okay, that's what I was thinking. So again, there's a lot of noise around this right now, but the buzz is actually really kind of starting. And I would say, and you'll see with the research that I'll show you, not that many organizations are actually great at it, okay? So what we see in the room here is absolutely what we see, I would say, in the rest of the world, right? So so this is actually research from the ICF. So some of you may be members of the International Coach Federation. If you are, the research that I'm presenting there is actually free on their website. If you're not, I think it's like $40 or something, but it's actually really good data. So the ICF did some research with the Human Capital Institute, and it's building a coaching culture for change management, right? So they actually, the umbrella through which they studied it was actually within change management situations. But I mean, you know, we're all managing change nowadays. All of our clients are, and I'm sure you all are in the room as well. So it definitely does apply. So when they did the research, they found that only 15% of respondents have a strong coaching culture at their organizations, right? So again, you guys are not alone, right? It's only 15%. Now we know that this is really important, and we'll see why. Among the organizations with a strong coaching culture, about 3 out of 5, so that's 61%, are also classified as high-performing organizations, right? We're starting to see the importance of having that strong coaching culture. Now, companies with strong coaching cultures actually outscore their competition by 21% in investments in employee development and 30% in employee engagement survey scores, right? So the employees are more engaged when there's a higher coaching culture, a stronger coaching culture, and also there's more investment in employee development. Now, the other thing that we've found is it's actually really correlated to business success as well. Okay? And so we're going to see a few things that you can do to start building that coaching culture, right, within the organization. So let's look at, first of all, 4 types of coaches, and we've talked a little bit about that up front, right? So if you want to create that coaching culture, you really do need coaches from different areas in the business. First of all, you want leader coaches, right? And so those leader coaches will provide guidance, obviously, right? And they'll help set up their people for success, right? So that can be insights, it could be resources, it could be helping them solve problems, it could be removing barriers, right? So basically, leader is guiding, and that's your typical type of coaching that we'll usually see. It's about helping guide them to solve their problem. Now, the second type of coach that we do see, right, often in organizations is peer coaches, right? And the benefit of that is that they offer that candid partnership, right? A lot of people struggle letting their guard down with their own leaders, right, or even higher ups in the organization. So with peers, they can actually, listen to that candid feedback, and it also helps to break down the silos and the collaboration. So that's another type of coaching that you want to have to build a strong coaching culture. The fourth thing is direct reports, and we don't see that often. Direct reports coaching leaders, right, on their area of expertise. So again, a lot of us struggle in asking for coaching from our direct reports, but we also see that it's actually one of the most critical aspects of building a strong coaching culture. And when you think about it, when team members share their expertise and their input with their leader, they're actually more likely to feel valued and a trusted member of the team, right? And they're actually probably going to be more engaged. And they do know, as we've seen, leaders are more removed from the technical, right? So their employees do know a lot of things that they can teach them. And then, of course, external coaches do provide that objectivity, right? They can play a valuable role in providing that outside perspective, and also can be objective without having that concern for the politics, right? And can be that sounding board for leaders. So those are your four types of coaches. So our last polling question here that I'm going to ask you, just to, again, take the pulse in the room. In your organization, which of the following have you put in place? Do you have leaders that are trained as coaches, right? So I'm being specific here, not just leaders that are coaches, but leaders that you have trained as coaches. Do you have peers that you have trained as coaches? Because, again, peers need to have training to know how to be a good coach. Do you have any direct reports, et cetera, okay? So we're going to start the poll now. You're going to see it here. Do you also have external? Is it the above, or it's maybe a combination of A, B, and C?
Just before I start the polling question, there was a chat from Chantal that said, how can we measure the coaching culture?
So for now, I would say there isn't really any measurement related to actual culture. It's more of like kind of like an organizational culture, I would say. The way that you can sort of do it kind of indirectly, I would say, is through engagement surveys. Would probably be helpful. As we were saying before, organizations with strong coaching cultures have higher engagement, employee engagement survey scores. That can kind of be a way in which you'll do it indirectly. So hope is your question. And that's a good way. Yeah. Engagement can be one of the things you measure. It could be turnover, right, retention before you started implementing your culture and after. So it's not a direct measurement. It's kind of like when you do a level 3 assessment for training, right? There's so many things that you can try to start to implement sometimes at the same time as you're, rolling out the courses, that it's sometimes hard to differentiate. Is it just the course, or is it everything else that you implemented at the same time? So it's kind of the same thing, right? You can measure it, absolutely, but it's usually with indirect means. Level 3 evaluation, level 4 evaluation in training. We're going to close the poll now.
I'll open the poll. Okay. I just waited after you were speaking. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, no worries. All right. So we're going to give you some time. Sorry about that. Thanks, Harriet. Monitoring me. Love it. All right. We'll just give you a few more seconds to do that. Okay, we're going to close the poll now.
I'm just waiting for a few people who are still in process of clicking the button.
Cool.
And they should be able to click in 10 seconds.
right, so I'm guessing we'll see the answers in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, they will. There we go.
Okay.
Now.
Okay. Cool. All right. Okay. So for some of you are probably, not necessarily training. Okay. So your leaders might be doing, or your peers or direct reports might be doing some coaching, but they're not trained. So that might be it. Yeah. Okay. Which is the case with most of you. Okay. Or a combination of usually internal stuff. Okay. And a few had external. Okay. So that's kind of what we usually see in the research. Now you can start to see that the more of these that you have, the stronger coaching culture will be. So it's kind of also a nice self-assessment for you to see, oh, well, maybe do we need to have direct reports? And is that something that we can implement in our coaching culture, right? You'll need to create that environment and the conditions of success for that coaching culture to thrive. So that's another thing, right? So it's great to have direct reports trained as, coaches, for example, or peers, right? But then if you're also not training them on how to give effective feedback, then, it's kind of going to be moot because they're probably going to be more of in a tell versus seek mode, right? If you have a culture where it's, basically nobody should make a mistake ever, then it's going to be very difficult to create that coaching culture, right? Because when you coach, then you enable people to learn from their mistakes, right? If you don't have an inclusive culture, it's going to be very difficult, once again, to have the conditions of success where you do have strong coaching culture, et cetera. Same thing for collaborative. If your people are working in silos, well, it's going to be very difficult for them to help each other out. So these are also some of the things that you want to also work on as you're creating a coaching culture. So it's really, that's why we call it a culture, because it's not just one element. It's not just saying, hey, give the leader the skills to learn how to be a better coach. It's about how can we create that environment. A few things here.
Annie, there's just a question from Shauna in the chat. When referencing training for coaches, do you mean formal trainings like certified trainers, or more informal from learning and development?
Both. Yeah, it'd be both. It could, we talked about the ACE model, all right, that we use. It could be the GROW model that you guys use. As long as you're giving them the skills, it can be through training. But it can also be through modeling, right? They can go observe another coach, right? As long as they are skilled in a certain way where they develop the ability, and they're not just doing it like on the fly, not quite sure how, right? So developing the ability to listen, to give feedback, et cetera. Yeah. So whichever way makes sense to you in your organization. Great. So where can you start, right, if you want to build a coaching culture? And if this doesn't happen overnight, it's not going to take 2 weeks. So it's baby steps, right? Like me learning to play golf, right? I'm going to have to go to one lesson, maybe two, and then start playing, right? And I'm not going to be a great golfer right off the bat. So there's certain things that you can do to take the baby steps towards creating that culture. The first one is you really want to engage senior leaders as sponsors. So needing to believe that this is important. That's really your first step. That being said, you can be an influencer yourself, right, and then eventually influence them and do other stuff, right, as you're doing that. You also want to embed it also in your talent management processes, ideally, right, because if it's your coaching culture standalone, it's not going to work, right? You also want to develop leaders at all levels, as we've said, right, to be coaches. You want to give them the skills and the tools to do that. You also create incentives and rewards to reinforce coaching behavior. So again, if people are really just, incentivized on the performance they deliver and not on how they're helping each other or collaborating or coaching, well, they're not going to do it, right? That we see in organizations that excel, they do design personalized and customized coaching solutions. And so that's an important one, right? Things that fit your business. They also use analytics to measure and communicate the impact of coaching. And as I said, some of those needs are going to be a little bit indirect. And also use a combination of internal and external coaches. So just external coaching doesn't work, just internal coaching either. You really do need to implement coaching culture across the organization. You need a bit of both, right? It's kind of like your blended learning, right? It wouldn't be just a course, or it wouldn't be just application. And then you also need to consider the needs of the modern learner. As we've said, how do people learn today, right? It's very different than how it used to be a few years ago. So I want to talk a little bit about how to implement a peer coaching program, if that's something that you want to do with your organization. It's a couple of, this is actually from TD Magazine, right, February 2019. There's an article in there from Shayna Johnson. And a couple of things that she found that works best is, first of all, you want to identify a program coordinator, right? It's like anything. You want to make sure that you have someone who ensures that the peer coaching group has the resources and other support it needs, right? So for sure you want to have the buy-in from execs, as we said, but then you want to make sure you have someone who is managing the logistics. And you want to make sure that you're setting the foundation be successful, right, so that participants know and understand what the objectives are. So this is just one way that you can do it. You don't have to do a formal program, as one of you was asking. You don't have to, but it does help, of course, to create that culture. And also people need to understand, what is the commitment involved if I'm going to be a peer coach, right? What does that commitment involve in terms of time? And, you know, what does that mean for me? And then you want to provide that training, ideally, on the coaching skills, right? And it could be formal training, it could be informal training, but as long as they feel comfortable in those coaching skills, so that they're not doing it poorly, as we've seen at the beginning, which is going to be less effective. And we know coaching is a set of behaviors. It's not just one skill. Behaviors like being able to ask questions, by asking feedback, giving feedback, etc., right? And once you've mastered all those behaviors, then it comes together for you to have a bigger impact. And that at the beginning, as we wrap up here, we want to make sure that we keep a few things in mind. You want to ensure that your ripple effect of the coaching has a positive impact on your organization. A few things to keep in mind here. First of all, every conversation is a coaching opportunity. So if I want you to take something away from our session today, it's that. Right? Every conversation is a coaching opportunity. It doesn't have to be a sit-down, formal 30-minute discussion. That's the first thing. The second thing is you need to help leaders and peers and direct reports, if you want to create that coaching culture, develop their skills in whichever way makes sense to your organization. And also ask yourself the question, what can you do to help build that coaching culture, right? Maybe your organization needs to be better at giving feedback or receiving feedback or being more agile, or you need to, upskill right? So what does that look like? So I'm going to leave you by asking you a question. What one thing after our conversation today that you're like, you know what, we really need to start doing that now in our organization? It could be skills building, it could be training on coaching, it could be peer coaching that you want to start to implement. Maybe you want to build a program around that. Maybe you just want people to get better at giving each other feedback. Like, what is the one thing that you now know, hey, you know what, we need to start doing that? So I'm going to do that. And if you do want to know more from us, if you want to learn more, I've given you the global leadership forecast data that I've shared. You can also find that on our website. You can contact us here. You've got the contact information. We also have a Twitter feed. I'll give you my personal email address also if you do want to contact me, if you have any questions after the presentation today, or if you need to brainstorm anything, it'll be my pleasure. And I'll leave you guys with that. If you do have any questions, we've got a couple of minutes left. You're more than welcome to ask them. You can raise your hand or send a chat. And thank you, everyone, for your participation today. I had a lot of fun. I hope that you did too. Good for those of you who I know in the room, and happy to meet those of you that didn't know before. There you go. Got my email address. You can more likely email me if you want to know more. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and I'll be here for the next 2 minutes if you've got any questions. The recording, etc., after the session today.
question. Oh, there you go. Got it. Okay, good.
Yeah. So I like active modern coaching. It's not like super recent, but mainly for frontline, I would say it gives a lot of tools and tips in there. It's a really good one. And there's no coach, right? That's another good one as well.